There have been many long and extensive searches for lost media over the years. I'm sure you've heard of cases like Clockman, Crackmaster, Rhapsody Street Kids, and A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants, but there's one that's always stuck out to me: Wake in Fright, a controversial 1970s Australian film that went partially lost for many decades. It would have to be one of the longest searches in lost media history. Now, to dive a bit deeper and get the most accurate retelling, I didn't use your typical sources from the Lost Media Wiki. Instead, I bought this DVD and Blu-ray set, which contains a 48-page booklet containing various accounts and sources from those who worked on and are close to the film. Let's start diving in. Our story begins with a 1961 novel by Kenneth Cook called Wake in Fright. Its critical reception would lead to many wanting to adapt it for film, one of which being Morris West. He was the first to gain the film rights, which wouldn't work out. He was unsuccessful at raising money for it, so he sold the rights. It was now to be co-produced by the Australian company NLT Productions and the American firm Group W Films. With Evan Jones already settled on writing the screenplay, a director was greatly needed, and that would end up being Ted Kutcher, a Canadian who had little experience of Australia, which might have been needed for a film such as this. But he persisted and clearly put a lot of effort into the production. This was actually the fourth ever film Ted ever directed, with him going on to do the same for such films as First Blood, Switching Channels, and Weekend at Bernie's. Wake in Fright was to be produced by George Willoughby, a man more known for his B-movie projects. This conflicted with Kutcher, who clearly wanted this to be an A-movie. The crew argued over many other things too, such as choices made while writing the script, the budget, and the casting. Speaking of which, let's go over the cast. First, there's Gary Bond, an English actor who plays the role of John Grant. The actor was openly gay, and some elements of that are even shown via the characters' interactions. There's also the biggest star of the film, Donald Pleasance, another English actor who plays Clarence Doc Tyson. He's been in several big movies, by playing Blofeld in You Only Live Twice, Robert Parsons in the 50s version of 1984, and Dr. Sam Loomis in some of the Halloween films. Oh, and he narrated the short film Lonely Water, where he is portrayed as the spirit of the dark and lonely water. You've probably seen it before on lists of creepy commercials and PSAs.
But that pool is deep. The boy is showing off. The bank is slippery.
Wake in Fright also stars English actress Sylvia Kay as Jeanette Hines and two Australian mates, Chips Rafferty and Jack Thompson, playing Jock Crawford and Dick respectively. The budget estimated to be around $700,000 in Australian, which with inflation is equivalent to a little over 8 million Australian today, or 5,700,000 in USD. Filming would begin right before Christmas 1969, with production and post-production being completed by early 1971. Our story begins with John Grant, a school teacher used to living in the city, but in order to guarantee a job, he posted a substantial amount of money with the state education department. This also means he must work outside his contract for 2 years. At a tiny school in Tabunda, John has had a hard time adapting to it, and desperately needs a break. Unlucky for him, Christmas break is approaching. While waiting for his morning flight to Sydney, he stays at a small mining town known as the Yaba. There, he meets a police officer named Jock, who introduces him to the gambling den, filled with many of the locals. John gets the brilliant idea to play two-up with them, in order to make enough money to break his bond. But instead, he loses it all after risking his winning streak.
Tiles they are! Tiles! Two tiles!
Now broke, John spends the rest of the night drinking, where he meets a man named Tim Hines. The two head to his home, where John meets Tim's daughter, Jeanette, and some of his friends. We are also more properly introduced to Doc, who takes pity on John and takes him to his shack. Doc reveals that his views of the world and alcoholism have stopped him from sharing his dreams. Oh, and he reveals that he and Jeanette are in an open relationship, which makes things intriguing as she has tried to seduce John the night before. Tim, Doc, and their mates decide to take John hunting. Hunting for kangaroos, to be specific. This scene is pretty brutal, as we see these marsupials being shot, punched at, and stabbed to death. I'll be diving deeper into the scene pretty shortly. I'm going to be spoiling the rest of the film, so jump to this timestamp if you haven't seen it yet. So after the hunt, Doc attempts to start a homosexual interaction with John. This causes him to try and leave town and starts hitchhiking, but after some miscommunication, he ends up back at the Yaba. Seeing no other way out of town, he returns to Doc's place in order to kill him. But instead, due to his declining mental health, he tries to commit suicide. He survives, with Jock and Doc helping him get back on his feet. 3 weeks later, John leaves the Yaba once and for all via train, starting a new semester as if Christmas break never happened. The film was first released in May 1971 at the Cannes Film Festival, and it was critically acclaimed. Many praised the film for its storytelling and visuals, but did criticize it for some controversial decisions. Wake in Fright's first commercial release was on July 22, 1971 in Paris, which was the only territory it actually did really well in financially. Everywhere else, the film bombed. It didn't seem to connect with audiences, especially when it was released in Sydney on October 8, 1971. And one of the reasons, as people claim, is due to the kangaroo scene, because this wasn't faked. These are real kangaroos being shot and killed on screen. The story most tell is that a group of hunters were hired for the scene. These men were drunk and started becoming very lousy shots. The scene became so gruesome in fact that the crew faked a power outage to stop. But this isn't really how it happened. Contrary to popular belief, it happened a slightly different way. And my source? From Ted Kotcheff himself in 2012. To summarize, he said that no kangaroos were hurt specifically for the film. He didn't want to hurt any animals just for the purpose of a movie, especially after seeing it happen before. He recounts a World War I film he saw, where gasoline is poured on a dog and is ignited. So when faced with the task of showing the hunt, he got some help from the Royal Australian Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, aka the RSPCA. Ted was told about a group of hunters who go out during the night in refrigerator trucks and mow down hundreds of roos, and they mainly do this for profit, as the skin would be used for stuffed animals and the meat for pet food. Ted was able to join them and brought along a camera, telling these men not to do anything out of the ordinary, just to go hunting like they always do. This all repulsed Ted, as he only ended up using around 25% of the footage, with the rest containing more horrid shots. And the weird thing is, the RSPCA wanted him to show more gruesome footage. They really wanted to show how horrible and gruesome these hunts are, to bring more awareness. Ted would have never wanted to hurt them, ever. He stated, quote, "I love the kangaroos. I spent a lot of time with them, intimately close. They would lie around my director's chair, waiting, like extras, to be asked to do something. They are the most anthropomorphic creatures I've ever encountered. Nothing on earth would ever persuade me to hurt them or any other animal for any reason whatsoever." The use of the hunt in the film has been defended by the crew and Ted alike, even with the prospect that he's a vegetarian. Some criticize this aspect of the film due to its shocking nature and the possible inhuman way it's done. Another controversy of Wake in Fright is the portrayal of the outback locals. They are shown as brash, drunken, uncaring hooligans. One man during the premiere even stood up from his seat, pointed at the screen, and shouted, "That's not us!" To which Jack Thompson replied back, "Sit down, mate, it is us." Fucking Australians, man, you gotta love them. Due to its low box office returns and lackluster reception among audiences, Wake in Fright only showed in theaters for a short amount of time. The only place where that wasn't true was in Paris, where it stayed in theaters for a few months. Soon enough, the film would fade into obscurity, leading to it becoming lost over the course of the 1970s. But before that, the film had a few scant TV airings which cut several minutes off from the film, sort of like a censored version. Same with the rare VHS releases. These were floating around over time, but they were in poor quality, meaning the original negatives needed to be found. What you need to know is that during this time, the original negative is the initial version of the movie, which is usually secured away somewhere. And using that, filmmakers are able to generate new prints, which are the ones shown in theaters, and those were the ones turning up in poor quality. Many of these false leads would occur, with the biggest one being a rediscovered print found in Dublin, Ireland, of all places. It was seen as too poor quality to be released commercially. This all greatly frustrated the film's original editor, Anthony Buckley, who I will be referring to as Tony. Tony in the National Film and Sound Archive finally decided to set out and find the original negatives. During the first several years of the search, no leads seemed to come up. That was until the new millennium when Tony received news that the British Film Laboratory had shipped it along with the entire bulk collection from London to the United States. But that didn't seem to lead anywhere until 2003 when the NFCA received a delivery to the location in Australia's capital, Canberra. 2 large pallets containing film cans of various papers and seemingly the lost film itself. However, this was a false alarm. This wasn't the original film negatives, instead being the cut for television United States prints labeled as Outback. Even with another, more devastating false lead, Tony kept at it and continued the search into 2004. Then he was able to get into contact with Megan Worthy at Oz Films in Los Angeles. With their help, Tony was allowed to CBS's Iron Mountain Vaults in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Damn it, why Pittsburgh? Anyways, there they found a bin labeled For Destruction. They found the original negatives along with another US edit of Wake and Fright. The original film had been found, and it was shipped off to the NFCA in August 2004, and reportedly, if Tony and crew had not shown up, the film would have been destroyed, with all of the contents inside that bin. In late 2006, a sponsorship agreement was made between the previously mentioned National Film and Sound Archive and Sydney's AtLab Laboratories, which has since changed its name to Deluxe Australia. But first the debate was settled, choosing between either photochemical or a digital pathway restoration. Some test shots were compared, with the final decision going to the latter, due to the better shot quality and more long-term preservation. AtLab would painstakingly go through each frame and digitally altering it, removing scratches, dust, etc. They wanted to restore the film as much as possible, while still maintaining Ted Kotcheff's vision, and that's pretty much what happened. By 2009, the film was ready, and was sent to the Sydney Film Festival in June of that year. It received many rave reviews, especially from those pointing out how well done the restoration work was. It was also shown at Cannes, with the same kind of positive responses, though it was reported that 12 people walked out during the kangaroo hunt scene. And on November 4th, 2009, Wake and Fright was released to DVD and Blu-ray, officially putting this case of lost media to rest. Its legacy lives on as one of the greatest Australian films of all time, and overall just a plain masterpiece and visual compelling book adaptation. I personally heard about this film in 2015 due to a list video by Danger Dolan, with me talking about it in a video 5 years later. I'm just so fascinated by it, and it's for sure one of my favorite movies of all time. There's actually someone who uploaded the entire film onto YouTube, weirdly enough, though I still own it on DVD and Blu-ray due to my love for the movie. Seriously, it's a beautiful film you just have to watch for yourself.